When I bought my house in Willow Creek Estates, I was looking for peace and quiet. A nice suburban neighborhood, a backyard for grilling, and friendly neighbors. Turns out, I got 2 out of 3. Because one neighbor wasn't so friendly. Her name? Karen Whitmore. HOA president. Walking rulebook. And, as I would soon learn, a serial 911 caller. It started on a Saturday morning. The guy across the street, Tom, was doing his usual yard work, mowing, edging, blowing leaves. Standard suburban stuff. But then, a police cruiser pulled up. I watched from my porch as 2 officers got out. They walked straight to Tom. I saw his confused face as they talked to him. Then, Karen stormed out of her house, smug as ever. I walked over, pretending to be interested in my lawn, and caught part of the conversation. "Ma'am," one officer said, sighing, "a leaf blower at noon is not a noise violation." Karen huffed. "It's disruptive. This is a family neighborhood." Tom threw up his hands. "I do this every Saturday." "Well, maybe you should be more considerate," Karen sneered. The officer turned back to her. "Unless the noise exceeds local ordinance limits, there's no violation. Please don't call 911 for this again." Karen's face twitched. She crossed her arms. "Fine," she snapped. "But this isn't over." I had a bad feeling about that. 2 days later, another cop car showed up. This time, Karen had called the police on kids. Apparently, some of the neighborhood children were drawing with sidewalk chalk in their driveway. Karen? She called it vandalism. I stood outside and watched the officers try to contain their laughter as Karen ranted about defacing property. "Ma'am," the cop said, "sidewalk chalk is not a crime. It washes off with water." Karen's face turned red. "This is how gangs start," she screeched. Tom, watching from across the street, nearly choked on his drink. The officer just sighed. "Don't call us for this again, ma'am." "Karen?" She glared at the kids like they were a criminal enterprise. Then she stomped back inside. At this point, half the neighborhood had noticed Karen's habit of calling 911 for nonsense. But she was just getting started. One evening, I was having a beer on my porch when I saw flashing red and blue lights. Another cop car. Another Karen complaint. This time, she called the police on a dog. Specifically, on my next-door neighbor's golden retriever, Daisy. Her crime? Barking. "Dogs bark, ma'am," the officer said, exasperated. "Not at my house." Karen snapped. "That's how sound works," the cop replied. I swear I saw the officer's soul leave his body for a second. Karen wasn't backing down. "This dog is a public menace." The officer rubbed his temples. "Ma'am, unless the dog is barking nonstop for hours, this is not a police matter." Karen's eye twitched. But even she realized she was losing. So, she did what Karens do best. She stormed off, muttering, "This town is going to hell." The officer just shook his head and left. By this point, the police had started recognizing Karen's address. So when another patrol car pulled up, I already knew what had happened. This time, Karen called the police on a trash can. "No, seriously." Her complaint? "My neighbor's garbage can is out too early." The officer stared at her. "Ma'am, that's not a crime." Karen scowled. "It makes the neighborhood look low class." The officer pinched the bridge of his nose. "This is not a police issue. Please stop calling us for HOA problems." Karen gasped. "But I am the HOA." The officer stared at her. "That's not how this works." He turned and left. Karen stood there, fuming, her eyes locked on the garbage can like it had personally insulted her. I knew this wasn't over. And I was right. Because the next call was the one that finally ended it all. It was July 4th. A few families were having a barbecue and setting off legal, small fireworks in their driveways. And, of course, Karen called 911. This time, she demanded they arrest someone. "This is a dangerous activity," she shrieked. "It's a fire hazard. It's illegal." When the officers arrived, they were done. One of them stepped out and immediately sighed. "You again?" Karen crossed her arms. "I'm protecting the neighborhood." The officer turned to the group of people setting off harmless sparklers and fountains. Folks, are these fireworks legal? Yep. The officer turned back to Karen. Ma'am, this is your 5th police call over nothing. We're officially issuing you a warning for misusing emergency services. Karen's face went bright red. You can't do that. The officer pulled out his citation book. Actually, I can. If you keep abusing 911, you could face a fine or even criminal charges. Karen's mouth fell open. The neighborhood cheered. Karen shrieked like a banshee and stormed inside. And just like that, the 911 call stopped. After her humiliating warning, Karen lost power fast. The HOA turned against her. People stopped listening to her complaints. And 6 months later, she quietly sold her house and left town. Brookhaven? It thrived. And the police? They never had to deal with her again. As for me, I sat on my porch, beer in hand, watching the sunset. For the first time in years, I knew one thing for sure. 911 was finally safe from Karen. After Karen's final police meltdown, the neighborhood celebrated. No more ridiculous complaints. No more Karen patrols. No more HOA dictatorship. For the first time in years, Brookhaven felt normal. Karen? She went quiet. No more yelling about violations. No more watching the streets from her window. It was almost too quiet. And that's when I knew. She was planning something. One evening, Linda, our HOA treasurer, showed up at my door. She was holding a letter, her face pale. "You're not gonna believe this," she said. She handed me the letter. I read the first line. Then I read it again. Notice of legal action. Karen Whitmore v. the Brookhaven HOA. I blinked. She's suing the HOA? Linda nodded. She's claiming harassment and wrongful removal from leadership. I laughed out loud. She got kicked out because she called the cops over a trash can. Linda sighed. Well, she's saying we bullied her out of her home. I stared at the letter. You know what? Fine. Let's end this for good. Instead of settling, we did something Karen never expected. We fought back. And the best part? We had evidence. Police reports proving Karen misused emergency services. Copies of every ridiculous HOA violation she issued. Statements from multiple neighbors about her harassment. We didn't just defend ourselves. We filed a counterclaim for harassment and defamation. Karen had started a legal war. But she had no idea what was coming. The day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Karen sat at her table, smug as ever. When it was her turn to speak, she launched into a dramatic speech. I was a dedicated community leader, she cried. I only wanted order and respect. But these people, asterisk. The judge held up a hand. Mrs. Whitmore, please stay on topic. Karen's face twitched. Then, our lawyer stood up. Your Honor, we'd like to submit Exhibit A. The judge nodded. Our lawyer held up a stack of police reports. These are the 5 police calls Mrs. Whitmore made over petty complaints. She repeatedly misused emergency services for non-emergencies. Karen's jaw clenched. Then came Exhibit B, a folder of HOA violations, all signed by Karen. The judge flipped through them. His eyebrow twitched. Mrs. Whitmore, he said slowly, you find someone for sidewalk chalk? Karen crossed her arms. It was graffiti. The judge sighed. Then, he turned to our side. I've seen enough. This case is dismissed. Karen's face went white. Then, the judge turned to her. And, Mrs. Whitmore? You are hereby fined $2,500 for wasting court resources and making a frivolous claim. Karen gasped. You can't do that. The judge didn't even look up. Yes, I can. Next case. And just like that, Karen lost. Again. After her humiliating court loss, Karen finally gave up. A week later, her house went up for sale. She left without a word. No farewell. No revenge plot. No more nonsense. She just disappeared. Brookhaven thrived without her. No more HOA wars. No more 911 abuse. Just peace and quiet. Finally, one day, months later, I got a text from Linda. Linda, Guess where Karen moved? Me. Oh God. Where? Linda. To an apartment. In a NO Pets complex. Me. So she has no authority and no one to call the cops on? Linda. Yep. I stared at my phone. Then I burst out laughing. Karen, the queen of HOA tyranny, was now just another tenant with no power. It was the perfect ending. Brookhaven was finally free. And Karen? She had learned the hard way. Messing with us always ends the same way. She loses. With Karen finally gone, the neighborhood enjoyed an era of peace. No more random police calls. No more petty HOA violations. No more Karen lurking behind curtains, waiting to pounce. It was perfect. But just as I was starting to forget her existence, something strange happened. One morning, I was sipping coffee on my porch when I got an email from an unknown sender. Subject: HOA matters. Hello, neighbors. I have been made aware of multiple violations occurring in Brookhaven Estates. The integrity of our community is at risk. We need structure, rules, and enforcement before property values plummet. I am forming a new neighborhood watch group to restore order. Those interested in keeping our community clean and respectable should contact me immediately. Signed, a concerned citizen. I frowned. There was no name attached, but the tone felt way too familiar. And then I saw the email address. k.whitmore1980 @ My stomach dropped. No. Freaking way. Karen was still watching. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing subtle changes. Anonymous letters started appearing in mailboxes, listing community concerns. Someone kept taking photos of people's houses and leaving notes about violations. Rumors began spreading about new leadership coming to the HOA. At first, people brushed it off. Probably just some overzealous neighbor, they said. But I knew this had Karen's fingerprints all over it. She was trying to manipulate from the shadows. And I wasn't about to let her win. I decided to smoke her out. Since Karen was too afraid to show her face, I needed to force her into the open. So, I replied to her mystery email. Subject: HOA matters. Dear concerned citizen, I'm very interested in your ideas for improving the community. Can we meet in person to discuss? Best. My name. Within an hour, I got a reply. I prefer to operate anonymously for now. But I will be at the community park this Friday evening to observe the neighborhood's condition. Perhaps we will cross paths. Bingo. I set my plan in motion. That Friday evening, I arrived at the community park early. I wasn't alone. Linda, Tom, and a few other former victims of Karen's reign were with me. We spread out, waiting. Then, right on schedule, a familiar figure appeared. Karen. She was wearing sunglasses and a hat, trying to look inconspicuous. But there was no mistaking her. She walked around the park, looking at houses, writing things in a notebook. I walked right up to her. Fancy seeing you here, Karen. She froze. Then, she turned and forced a smile. Oh! I was just enjoying the park. I smirked. Still emailing neighbors about community concerns? Her smile faltered. I don't know what you mean. Linda held up a printed copy of Karen's email. You really thought nobody would figure it out? Karen's face turned red. She tried to deny it, but it was too late. The entire group surrounded her. Neighbors pulled out their phones, recording. Tom folded his arms. You don't live here anymore, Karen. Why are you still trying to run the neighborhood? Karen gritted her teeth. Because this place is turning into a disaster, she hissed. Loud children, lazy homeowners, people parking in their driveways like it's some kind of trailer park. I laughed. So, your solution was to secretly try to take control again? She crossed her arms. I was just offering helpful advice. Linda smirked. Oh, really? Then why did you use a fake name? Karen's mouth snapped shut. She knew. She was caught. Word about Karen's secret HOA takeover attempt spread fast. The new HOA leadership? They filed a cease and desist letter against her. The city? They issued another fine for continued harassment. And Karen? She finally disappeared. For real this time. No more secret emails. No more anonymous complaints. No more lurking in the shadows. Brookhaven was finally, truly free. Months later, I got a text from Linda. Linda, guess who just got evicted from her apartment? Me. Oh God. What happened? Linda called the building manager 27 times in 1 week. Complained about excessive walking in hallways. Me. She's unhinged. Linda, best part? She's moving to a retirement community now. Me. Please tell me it has an HOA. Linda, it does. I stared at my phone. Then I burst out laughing. Karen, the HOA tyrant, was now just another tenant under someone else's rules. Brookhaven was thriving. And Karen? She had finally been beaten at her own game. For good. With Karen finally exiled from Brookhaven, life returned to normal. The air felt lighter. The neighborhood was happier. And most importantly, no more nonsense 911 calls. For the first time in years, I actually forgot about Karen. Until one day, I got a Facebook notification. And just like that, she was back in my life. It was a post in a local community group. Brookhaven Estates has completely fallen apart since I left. Loud music, unkempt lawns, people parking wherever they want. It used to be a respectable place. I tried to warn them, but they wouldn't listen. Maybe now they regret pushing out the only person who cared. Karen Whitmore. I laughed so hard, I nearly dropped my phone. She was still bitter. Still complaining. Still trying to control Brookhaven from miles away. But the best part? The comments. Brookhaven wasn't afraid of her anymore. And the responses? Brutal. Tom, since you left, HOA fees dropped, complaints went down 90%, and we actually enjoy living here. Thanks for leaving. Linda, Karen, you literally called the police on a trash can. You were the problem. Someone knew. Wait, is this the lady who tried to get kids arrested for sidewalk chalk? Karen? She freaked out. Karen, I was trying to keep the community safe. Tom, from what, colored chalk drawings? Someone knew. I'm literally crying. She tried to start a secret HOA takeover. Karen tried fighting back, but it was hopeless. By the end of the night, the Facebook group banned her. Again. And once again. Karen lost. Months passed. Brookhaven was peaceful. Karen vanished. I thought that was the last we'd hear of her. But then, one evening, I was out shopping when I saw her. In a grocery store aisle, berating an employee about coupon policies. She was loud, furious, and waving a printed email like a legal document. I know my rights, she shrieked. I couldn't resist. I grabbed a can of soup, casually walked past her and said, "Calling 911 about it, Karen?" Her head whipped around so fast, I thought she'd snap her neck. Her eyes widened. "You," she gasped. I grinned. "Glad to see you're still keeping the world safe from sidewalk chalk." She turned red. Then, without another word, she stormed out of the store. And that was the last time I ever saw her. Brookhaven never had another HOA tyrant. The HOA became a reasonable group. The police stopped receiving nonsense calls. And everyone could live their lives in peace. Karen? Well, last I heard, she got kicked out of her retirement community for excessive complaints. She ended up living in a rental apartment. With no HOA authority. No power. No control. Just another tenant with nowhere to call. I sat on my porch one evening, beer in hand, thinking about it all. My brother pulled up, grinning. "So," he said, "think she'll ever show up again?" I chuckled. "Doesn't matter." I raised my beer. Because no matter where she goes, she'll always lose. And with that, I took a sip, knowing that Brookhaven would never see another Karen again. For months, Brookhaven remained peaceful. No surprise police visits. No HOA drama. No neighborhood-wide meltdowns over leaf blowers. It was almost too good to be true. And then, one morning, I stepped outside to get my mail. And in my mailbox, there was a strange letter. No return address. No stamp. Just a single sheet of paper with one sentence. "Enjoy it while it lasts." I stared at it. My stomach tightened. Because I recognized that handwriting. Karen wasn't done. At first, I thought Karen was just trying to spook me. But then, weird things started happening. Random violation notices appeared in people's mailboxes, even though the HOA didn't send them. Someone started emailing the HOA under an anonymous name, demanding stricter enforcement of community rules. A few mystery complaints about loud neighbors and messy yards were reported to the city, but nobody admitted making them. It was like a ghost version of Karen was still trying to control the neighborhood. And I wasn't the only one who noticed. Linda called me. I swear to God, it feels like she's still here. I sighed. Yeah, and she's still trying to stir up trouble. Then, one day, the real breakthrough happened. Tom, our neighbor who had suffered most of Karen's nonsense, caught something on his security camera. At around 2 a.m., a woman in a hoodie walked up to his mailbox. She slipped a letter inside. Then she hurried off. We pulled up the footage. It wasn't super clear, but I knew that walk. That posture. That Karen-shaped silhouette. She was back. Maybe not living in Brookhaven anymore. But she was still trying to mess with us. I decided we had two choices. Ignore her and hope she gives up. Remind her, one final time, that she lost. I chose option 2. So we set a trap. One night, Tom, Linda, and I waited outside in our driveways. We turned off our porch lights, sat in our cars, and watched. At 2:13 a.m., a figure appeared. She crept down the sidewalk, hood up, carrying a stack of papers. She stopped at a mailbox, slipped something inside, then moved to the next house. We waited, and then we hit the car alarms. Beep. Karen froze like a deer in headlights. Then, Linda turned on her floodlights. Karen's face was exposed. She was caught. Again. She tried to run, but we were already recording. Tom laughed. Did you really think we wouldn't figure this out? Karen stood there, shaking with rage. You people have ruined this neighborhood, she screeched. Karen, I said, shaking my head, you don't even live here anymore. Her eye twitched. That's why it's going downhill. I smirked. Then why are you still here, sneaking around like a raccoon? Karen turned red. She opened her mouth to yell something else. But then Tom held up his phone. Oh, by the way, we're sending this footage to the cops. Karen's face fell. You can't. Actually, we can. Linda grinned. And this time, we're pressing charges. Karen's entire body deflated. She turned and ran. But it was too late. Because the next morning, we turned the footage over to the police. And Karen? She got hit with a restraining order. She was officially banned from entering Brookhaven. Permanently. After that, the mystery complaints stopped. The fake violation letters disappeared. And Karen? She finally vanished. Brookhaven was at peace. For good. Months later, I got a text from Linda. Linda, you're not gonna believe this. Me, what now? Linda, Karen moved out of state. Me, good. She finally got the hint. Linda, you wanna know why she moved? Me, sure. Linda, because she got banned from 3 different neighborhoods. Me, I am screaming. I leaned back, laughing. Karen had spent her entire life trying to control everyone. And now? She couldn't even find a neighborhood that would take her. Brookhaven was thriving. And Karen? She was just another bitter ex-HOA tyrant with nowhere left to go. I sat on my porch, beer in hand, enjoying the quiet. And for the first time in years, I knew. Karen was never coming back. With Karen officially gone, life in Brookhaven was better than ever. No more ridiculous HOA rules. No more anonymous complaints. No more police showing up for nonsense. For the first time in years, the neighborhood actually felt like a community again. But then, something strange happened. A new HOA newsletter arrived in my mailbox. And at the bottom, a signature. Sincerely. K.W. My blood ran cold. No way. It couldn't be. Karen was gone. Right? I called Linda immediately. Tell me I'm imagining things. She sighed. You're not. I rubbed my temples. How is she still involved? She's literally banned from this neighborhood. Linda hesitated. She's not actually back in Brookhaven. Then how? She's advising someone new. That's when I saw the name under Karen's initials. HO President. Martha Whitmore. My stomach dropped. Karen's cousin. She wasn't in Brookhaven herself. She had sent a replacement. Martha moved quietly at first. No immediate fines. No random 911 calls. No major disruptions. But within a few months, the rules started creeping back in. Letters about community standards. Warnings about lawn decorations. Complaints about unsightly vehicles. It was the same old Karen playbook, just with a different face. And when I checked the new HOA policies online, the language was identical to Karen's old rules. Karen might not be physically here anymore, but she was still pulling the strings. I decided to dig deeper. If Karen was behind this, I needed proof. So, I started monitoring the new HOA activities. Who was pushing for the new rules? Who was suddenly getting fines? Who was attending HOA meetings? And that's when I saw it. A Zoom call between Martha and an unnamed advisor. The audio was clear enough to hear one familiar voice. Karen. She was coaching Martha on how to bring the rules back. I recorded everything. The next HOA meeting was packed. People were suspicious of Martha's new leadership. They wanted answers. I walked in with my laptop. Martha stood at the podium, smiling. I know change can be difficult, she said. But these rules will ensure that Brookhaven remains a respectable community. I raised my hand. Question. Martha smirked. Go ahead. I hit play on the recording. Karen's voice filled the room. If you start with community guidelines, they won't resist right away. Just introduce small fines first, like grass height and mailbox color. Once they accept those, we'll go after bigger violations. The room exploded. Is that Karen? Someone gasped. Martha's face went pale. Linda stood up. So, this isn't your plan, she demanded. You're just following Karen's orders? Martha stammered. I was just trying to help. Tom laughed. Help who? Karen? Because you sure as hell aren't helping us. Martha's power crumbled instantly. The HOA board immediately voted her out. The new rules were repealed. And Karen? This time, she was truly cut off for good. 2 weeks later, Karen sent one last email to the HOA. You people have no respect for structure or order. Brookhaven will crumble without my leadership. Enjoy living in chaos. It was the most Karen thing ever. And the best part? The HOA never responded. She was ignored. Forgotten. Powerless. Karen was done. For real this time. Brookhaven never had another Karen. The HOA stayed small and reasonable. The community stayed strong. And people actually enjoyed living there. One evening, I sat on my porch, beer in hand, watching the sunset. Linda walked up, smiling. Think she'll try again? She asked. I chuckled. Doesn't matter. I took a sip. Because no matter where she goes, no matter what she tries. I raised my bottle. Karen will always lose. And with that, we toasted to the future of Brookhaven. A Karen-free future. Forever. Months passed. Brookhaven remained peaceful. No surprise HOA violations. No Karen-inspired rules. No neighbors living in fear of clipboard inspections. Karen was finally gone, and life had moved on. Or so I thought. Because one day, I received an official-looking letter in the mail. From the city's legal department. My stomach dropped. I tore it open. And the moment I read the first line, I almost choked on my coffee. Notice of pending defamation claim. Karen Whitmore v. Brookhaven HOA residents. Karen was suing us again. I called Linda immediately. Tell me you got the same letter. She groaned. Yeah, this woman is deranged. I skimmed through the lawsuit. It was hilarious. Karen was suing the HOA again for character assassination, conspiring to ruin her reputation, wrongful exile from a community she built. I snorted. She literally got herself kicked out. We didn't exile her. Linda sighed. Yeah, but she thinks she's the victim. Tom texted our group chat. Tom, she's suing us for talking about her? LOL. I hope she sues the entire internet while she's at it. Linda, do we even need a lawyer for this? Me, nah. The The judge is gonna laugh her out of the courtroom. And, as it turned out, we were right. Karen showed up to court alone. No lawyer. Just her, a stack of papers, and pure delusion. She stood before the judge, rattling off nonsense about how she was publicly humiliated and betrayed by the town. Then, she claimed she had evidence. Her evidence was a Facebook comment from Tom that said, "Karen is the worst neighbor of all time." The judge rubbed his temples. "Mrs. Whitmore," he sighed, "do you have anything else?" Karen huffed. "Is that not enough?" The judge leaned forward. "Ma'am, you're suing an entire neighborhood because someone called you annoying on the internet." Karen's face twitched. The entire courtroom was silent. Then the judge sighed again and said the best sentence of all time. "This case is dismissed." Karen gasped. "You can't do that." "I literally can," the judge replied, already standing up to leave. Karen stood there, frozen in place as the case was thrown out. Once again, Karen lost. After her lawsuit collapsed, Karen finally gave up. She packed her bags and moved to a tiny rental apartment across the state. Rumor had it, she tried to join another HOA board there. But someone Googled her name. And guess what popped up? Her failed lawsuits. Her 911 abuse history. Her failed HOA dictatorship. Within weeks, she was rejected from every HOA in the area. She had nowhere left to go. Brookhaven? Never heard from her again. With Karen permanently erased from Brookhaven, life was better than ever. No more HOA tyranny. No more petty rules. No more random lawsuits. I sat on my porch one evening, beer in hand, watching the sunset. Linda walked by, laughing. "Think she'll try to sue someone else?" I smirked. "Probably. But it won't be our problem." Tom strolled over. To a Karen-free future. We clinked bottles, knowing that no matter what, Karen would always lose. And Brookhaven would always win. For the next few months, Brookhaven was Karen-free. No ridiculous HOA fines. No mystery complaints. No power-hungry tyrants lurking in the shadows. Everything was finally peaceful. Until one day, I got a letter in the mail. A legal letter. And the sender? Karen Whitmore. My stomach dropped. What the hell was she up to now? I ripped open the letter and read the first line. "Dear my name. You have engaged in defamatory and malicious conduct against me. I am pursuing legal action to restore my reputation." I laughed. Karen was suing me? For defamation? For what? Exposing her own behavior. Linda called me 10 minutes later. "You get the letter?" "Yep." She sent them to everyone who voted her out of the HOA. I shook my head. She's really this desperate? She doesn't know when to quit, Linda sighed. But this time, I wasn't playing defense. This time, I was going on the attack. Instead of panicking, we got to work. I met up with Tom, Linda, and a few neighbors. "All right," I said, laying out our strategy. "She wants to play the legal game? Fine. Let's bury her in evidence." We gathered. Every police report Karen filed. Security footage of her sneaking around mailboxes. The video of her meltdown in the last HOA meeting. Statements from multiple neighbors detailing her harassment. And, of course, we hired a damn good lawyer. When Karen's legal team saw what we had, they panicked. The hearing date arrived. Karen walked in, acting like she already won. She was dressed in a ridiculous white suit, trying to look like some wrongfully accused victim. She sat at her table, smug as ever. And then, we played the video footage. The 911 calls. The trash can incident. The sidewalk chalk complaints. By the time we were done, Karen looked like a complete lunatic. Even the judge looked exhausted. "Ms. Whitmore," he sighed, "this case is completely frivolous. Not only is there no evidence of defamation, but there is overwhelming proof that you were the one harassing this community." Karen's face turned bright red. But the judge held up a hand. "This lawsuit is dismissed. And furthermore, due to your repeated misuse of legal resources, I am fining you $10,000 in court costs." Karen's jaw dropped. The courtroom erupted in whispers. She lost. Again. And this time, she lost big. As we walked out of the courtroom, Karen snapped. She turned to us, screaming, "You think this is funny? You think you've won? I will never stop fighting you people." Linda raised an eyebrow. "You're literally banned from Brookhaven, Karen." Karen fumed. "This neighborhood will fall apart without me." Tom smirked. "You mean like how property values went up the second you left?" Karen lost it. She screamed something completely incoherent and stormed out of the courthouse. And that was the last time I ever saw her. For real. After Karen's final defeat, she disappeared. Some say she moved to another state. Some say she tried to join a new HOA and got banned there too. Some say she started a Facebook group dedicated to hating Brookhaven. Me? I didn't care. Because Brookhaven was thriving. No HOA dictators. Number 911 abuse. No more Karen. One evening, I sat on my porch, beer in hand, enjoying the quiet. My brother pulled up, grinning. "So," he said, "think she'll ever try again?" I chuckled. "Doesn't matter." I raised my bottle. Because no matter where she goes, Karen will always lose. And with that, we toasted to a Karen-free world. Forever. Brookhaven had finally moved on. No more Karen sightings. No more petty HOA rules. No more 911 calls for absolute nonsense. Life was peaceful. Until one day. Linda sent me a text. "Linda, check Facebook. Right now." Me, "Why? What happened?" Linda, "She's back." I opened the local neighborhood group. And right there, at the top of the page, "Brookhaven is falling apart. I left for 1 year, and now the streets are filthy, the noise is unbearable, and people park like savages. This used to be a respectable neighborhood. The HOA is a joke. I should never have been removed." Karen Whitmore. I nearly spit out my coffee. She had the audacity to post like she was still in charge, even after being banned, even after losing in court. This woman was truly unhinged. If Karen thought she was going to get support, she was in for a rude awakening. The comments section turned into absolute carnage. "Tom, this is the lady who called the police over a leaf blower." "Linda, Karen, you don't even live here anymore." Someone new. "Wait, is this the psycho who tried to secretly restart the HOA?" HOA member. "The only thing Brookhaven needs protection from is you." Karen tried to argue. "Karen, you're all blind. The property values will plummet without strict enforcement of the rules. You'll be begging me to come back." Then, someone posted a meme. A picture of a trash can with the words, "Breaking news, Karen declares war on garbage bins." The entire comment section exploded. Karen? She deleted her post within the hour. And the Facebook group banned her. Again. It was glorious. But she wasn't done yet. A week later, the HOAs started getting reports. Someone left their trash cans out too long. There are unsightly lawn decorations ruining the aesthetic of the neighborhood. Loud music is becoming a problem. At first, we thought it was just normal complaints. But then, we checked the email address. And guess what? The sender? K. Whitmore 1980 @. She was at it again. Even miles away, Karen was still trying to police the neighborhood. I decided to handle this personally. I emailed Karen directly. Subject: Stop. Karen. You don't live here. You have no power here. Stop trying to control this neighborhood from behind a keyboard. We all know it's you. Again. Within 10 minutes, she replied. Subject: This is MY Legacy. You people ruined Brookhaven. The standards are gone. I worked hard to make it the best community in the county, and now it's just another sloppy, lawless neighborhood. I have every right to voice my concerns. If you don't like it, too bad. I laughed out loud. She really thought she was some kind of HOA martyr. I sent one final reply. Karen, this is harassment. The HOA has forwarded your complaints and email records to the authorities. If you continue, you'll be in violation of your restraining order. Consider this your last warning. And just like that, the email stopped. For good. Months later, I got a call from my brother. You're gonna love this, he said. What now? Karen just got kicked out of another HOA. I nearly choked on my drink. You're kidding. Nope, he said, laughing. She moved to some new community 2 towns over. Tried the same crap, complaints, fines, trying to get on the board. Guess what happened? They kicked her out? Faster than we did, he said. She lasted 6 months before they banned her from meetings and blocked her from their email system. I sat back, grinning. Karen had spent years trying to rule Brookhaven. Now? She couldn't even keep a house in a new HOA. She had burned every bridge. And now, she was just a powerless, bitter ex-HOA dictator with nowhere left to go. Brookhaven never had another Karen. The HOA remained reasonable. The community thrived. And Karen? She was nothing but a bad memory. One evening, I sat on my porch, beer in hand, watching the sunset. Linda walked up, smirking. So, think she'll ever try again? I chuckled. Doesn't matter. I raised my beer. Because no matter where she goes, no matter what she tries, Karen will always lose. And with that, we toasted to a Karen-free world. Forever. Months had passed and Brookhaven remained peaceful. No Karen. No mystery complaints. No more HOA dictatorship. For once, it felt like the nightmare was truly over. Until I got a letter. A real, stamped, legal-looking letter. And when I saw the sender, my stomach dropped. Whitmore Legal Services. Oh, for the love of. Karen was back. I opened the letter and read the first line. Dear my name. This letter serves as a formal cease and desist notice regarding the continued defamation of my client, Karen Whitmore. I nearly fell out of my chair. Defamation? She had already lost this fight. She had been fined for it. And now, she was trying again? Linda called me 2 minutes later. Tell me you got the letter too. Oh yeah, I groaned. This woman doesn't know when to quit. But this time, Karen had made a mistake. A huge mistake. We did some digging into the firm that sent the letter. And guess what? Whitmore Legal Services didn't exist. It wasn't a real law firm. Karen had made up a fake legal office to send out threats. It was literally just her. She was pretending to be a lawyer. Which, if you don't know, is highly illegal. And I knew exactly what to do next. Instead of panicking, I forwarded the letter to an actual lawyer. And within a week, Karen got a real legal notice. Karen Whitmore, you're being investigated for unauthorized legal practice and fraudulent claims of representation. The penalty? A fine of up to $15,000. Potential criminal charges. She had tried one last power play. And it blew up in her face. The moment Karen got served with real legal papers, she went ballistic. She ranted on every online platform she could find. I am being persecuted for trying to protect my community. They are bullies, liars, destroyers of order. This is why the world is falling apart. No rules. No respect. The comments? Brutal. Karen, you literally faked being a lawyer. This is hilarious. Is this the same lady who called the cops on a trash can? Seek help. El Mayo, she thought she was Saul Goodman. Karen's public image was now permanently ruined. And soon after, she deleted all her accounts. And then, she vanished. After years of nonsense, Karen was finally gone. No more HOA takeovers. No more police calls. No more desperate legal threats. Brookhaven was truly free. I sat on my porch one evening, enjoying the quiet. Tom walked by, smirking. So, she's actually gone? I grinned. Oh yeah, this time, it's permanent. We clinked our drinks. And just like that, the HOA nightmare was officially over. Forever. Months later, I got one last update. Karen had moved to another state. She tried to join another HOA. And guess what? She got banned there too. Apparently, she tried to find someone for having too many bird feeders. They reported her immediately. She was shut down within weeks. And that was the last anyone ever heard of her. Brookhaven thrived. And Karen? She learned the hard way. That no matter where she goes, no matter what she tries, she will always lose. Brookhaven was finally free. No Karen. No mystery complaints. No fake legal threats. For months, life was quiet. Until I got an unexpected email. Subject: Urgent, Karen is planning something. Hey, my name. I know we haven't talked in a while, but I just saw something you need to know. Karen isn't done. She's trying to get back into power somewhere else. She's using a new name and has started calling herself a community consultant. She's already infiltrated another HOA. You need to see this. I'm attaching proof. Anonymous. I hesitated. No way. She wouldn't. Would she? I clicked the attachment. And right there, on an official HOA meeting agenda from a neighborhood 2 towns over, was the name. Community Consultant, Catherine W. Spencer. My blood ran cold. Karen had changed her name. And she was back at it again. This time, Karen wasn't moving in and taking over. She was hiding in the shadows. Instead of being HOA president, she was calling herself a neighborhood advisor. Basically, she was training a new HOA leader to be just like her. The new president? Some poor fool named Patricia. And Patricia was already making Karen-style moves. New HOA fines. Strict rules on yard decorations. Banning basketball hoops and driveway parking. Karen was rebuilding her empire. And I wasn't about to let it happen. I needed more proof. So, I came up with a plan. I created a fake Facebook profile claiming to be a new homeowner in Karen's new neighborhood. I joined their HOA discussion group. And within a week, Karen's advisor account sent me a message. Hello, new neighbor. I'm a community consultant helping to ensure that neighborhood name remains safe, orderly, and well-maintained. I'd love to chat about how we keep the standards high here. Let me know if you have any questions. Catherine W. Spencer. She was recruiting people, trying to brainwash them into another dictatorship. It was time to stop her. I contacted a few homeowners from Karen's new neighborhood. I explained everything. How Karen used to run Brookhaven like a dictatorship. How she got kicked out and banned. How she faked legal threats and tried to sneak back in. And guess what? They were already suspicious of Patricia. They had noticed the sudden rule changes. And they had heard about Karen's past. So, we put together a plan. We waited for the next big HOA meeting. Karen wasn't on the official schedule. But we knew she was there, pulling the strings. Halfway through the meeting, Patricia started talking about important community changes. That's when we stood up. Excuse me, Patricia, one of the homeowners said. We have some questions about your community consultant. Patricia froze. I don't see how that's relevant. Oh, it's relevant, I said, standing up. I walked forward and held up a folder. Because Catherine Spencer? Her real name is Karen Whitmore. Gasps. Whispers. Patricia looked like she was about to pass out. One of the board members grabbed the folder and flipped through the printed evidence. The old police reports. The fake legal letters. The restraining order. Then someone hit play on a recording of Karen's last meltdown in Brookhaven. Her voice filled the room. I will never stop fighting you people. Everyone turned to Patricia. You knew about this? One board member demanded. Patricia stammered. I just thought she was experienced. She told me she had years of community leadership. Tom, who had come just to witness the downfall, burst out laughing. Yeah, years of being an absolute lunatic. The entire room erupted. Karen had been exposed. Again. The HOA board voted immediately. Patricia was removed as president. Karen was permanently banned from advising or working with the HOA. A formal complaint was sent to the city for deceptive practices. Karen? She lost. Again. But this time, she lost every last shred of influence. She was publicly humiliated. And she had nowhere left to run. Months later, I got one last message from my anonymous source. Hey, my name, just an update. Karen moved to an apartment. No HOA. No neighborhood rules. No one to control. She tried complaining about a neighbor's loud TV. The landlord told her to mind her own business or find another place. She finally ran out of places to go. I sat back, grinning. After years of terrorizing communities, Karen was stuck in an apartment with zero power. The ultimate punishment. And Brookhaven? It thrived. For real this time. No comebacks. No last attempts. No more Karen. I sat on my porch one last time, beer in hand. Tom walked by, smirking. So, think she'll ever try again? I chuckled. Doesn't matter. I raised my beer. Because she's finally, actually, permanently done. And with that, we toasted to a Karen-free world. Forever. Brookhaven was finally free. For years, we had fought against the most notorious HOA tyrant in history. She had called the police over a trash can, tried to find children for sidewalk chalk, staged a secret HOA takeover twice, sent fake legal threats, got banned from multiple neighborhoods, changed her name to keep her HOA dream alive. And now, she was living in a tiny apartment, with no HOA authority, no rules to enforce, no power at all. Her HOA reign of terror was over. For good. One evening, I sat on my porch, beer in hand, watching the sunset. Linda and Tom walked up, smirking. So, think she'll ever try again? Linda asked. I chuckled. Doesn't matter. I raised my beer. Because no matter where she goes, no matter what she tries, Karen will always lose. And with that, we toasted to a Karen-free world. Forever.